Hi, I'm Ethan Reed, I'm 25, and I work as a marketing assistant at Pixel Forge Advertising Agency. My routine is a blur of endless meetings, tight deadlines, and the constant pressure to be efficient. The office walls are lined with colorful posters, each one representing campaigns we dream of executing, but which often get lost in the daily rush. I like to think I'm a good observer, always noticing the details others miss, and among those details, there's Chloe Miller. Chloe, the project coordinator, is like a beacon in the fog. At 26, she's everything I'm not: charismatic, outgoing, and respected by everyone. Her presence lights up the room, and her laugh is contagious. When she speaks, everyone stops to listen. To me, she's always seemed an unattainable figure, and with each day we spend in the office, the distance between us seems to grow. I admire her in silence, keeping the affection I feel for her in a safe, hidden place, like a secret I'd never dare to share. That day, I was about to finalize a project I'd taken on as my biggest challenge yet. As I focused on the last edits, I heard my office door open softly. It was Chloe. My heart pounded. She approached with a smile that could melt even the sternest boss. "Ethan, do you have a minute?" Her voice was soft, but there was a hint of urgency. I nodded, nervous, trying to keep my composure. "I need a favor," she began, a little hesitant. "My parents are arriving earlier than I expected, and I need you to pretend to be my boyfriend during their visit." The world around me seemed to stop for an instant. What she was asking for felt like a mix of panic and joy. The fear of facing this new situation enveloped me, but the excitement made me want to say yes immediately. Of course, I can do that." The words came out in a whisper, and I felt my face flush. Chloe smiled, relieved, and adrenaline surged through me. My routine was about to change. And somehow, I felt alive. What could I do? Just pretend to be her boyfriend. It was a game that could become very real. After our conversation, my heart was still pounding as I busied myself with small details. I made a coffee that I ended up spilling, fumbling even more. The messages I exchanged with colleagues made it clear that the expectation of a new presentation was in the air. But all I could think about was how to behave in front of Chloe's parents. She was so confident, and I so insecure. Later, a quick chat with Chloe about presentation adjustments only reaffirmed she was a force of nature, and I merely a spectator. She looked into my eyes, and for a moment I felt the distance between us might shorten, but fear seized me again, and I retreated, remembering I was just a colleague. As the day wore on, expectation and nervousness merged. I didn't know what to expect from this pretense, but the feeling of being closer to Chloe, even for a brief instant, made me believe perhaps, just perhaps, the small choices from now on might lead to something different, to a love I never knew could exist. As the minutes dragged on, I couldn't shake how my agency life had transformed since I started working there. Every corner of the office held memories of my first impressions of Chloe. They were instant flashbacks, like small films playing before my eyes as I tried to focus on final project details. I remember the first time I saw her. It was a sunny morning, and the office buzzed with energy. Chloe walked in, like a storm of creativity in that red blouse, accentuating her vibrant personality. She headed to the meeting room, her steps firm and decisive, and I found myself paralyzed, admiring her confidence. Back then, I was just starting out, keen to impress, to show I belonged in that dynamic world. I recall her praising one of my works. "Ethan, you really nailed the campaign. Connecting clients' emotions with the brand is a stroke of genius." Those words echoed within me like an anthem. I, a mere assistant, receiving recognition from someone so respected and admired. In that instant, I felt there might be a chance she would notice me, that I'd be more than a face in the crowd, but behind the professional facade, Loneliness accompanied me. With each achievement, each compliment, the feeling of being on a distant pedestal grew. First, it was shyness that kept me from approaching. Then, it was the fear that any false move could ruin the image I'd constructed of us. A dedicated colleague, she the charismatic one everyone adored. Sometimes I found myself daydreaming, imagining us at a coffee shop one day without work distractions. I saw myself telling her about my life, my insecurities, and, who knows, hearing about her casually mentioned frustrated romances. But this was just a fantasy, an illusion I would never have the courage to turn into reality. Life is full of choices, I thought, especially when I watched Chloe at the next desk, laughing and joking with colleagues. But love, love is complicated and can bring more pain than joy. This belief seemed deeply ingrained in her, though I wished she could see the beauty in vulnerabilities. The phrase, "Sometimes love hides in the simplicity of small choices," stayed with me. Each time Chloe spoke to me, every interaction, however brief, was a choice I made. It was a step towards what I desired most, or perhaps a leap into the unknown. I wondered if she could see beyond appearances, beyond my role as an assistant. The pressure around me mounted, and the expectation of Chloe's parents' visit seemed to echo through the space. The day arrived, and she was more nervous than usual. Like me, who was about to enter a charade that could change everything between us. Even if this dating was a pretense, a truth in my emotions was beginning to reveal itself. When Chloe's parents arrived, everything unfolded quickly. I was hidden in a corner, trying not to appear so nervous. The idea of playing a role beside her made me anxious. When I finally stepped into the room, I could feel Chloe's gaze and the tension in the air. The mood was dense, and her family's atmosphere seemed to contrast with my insecurity. "Hi, Mom, this is Ethan, my boyfriend," Chloe said, and I wondered if anyone was more nervous at that moment. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm, and I felt all the air had vanished. I watched her with a nervous smile, and she did the same, as if we were in a silent yet fragile agreement. The next few minutes were filled with trivial questions that somehow seemed laden with tension. I tried hard to be the ideal boyfriend, while Chloe balanced her role as a daughter and the charade we were playing. With each of her laughs, a piece of my heart warmed, but also grew heavier with the weight of the situation. Amidst the rehearsed dialogues, I noticed the tension dissipating. There was a moment when our hands accidentally brushed as she reached for something on the table, and I couldn't help but look into her eyes. That momentary connection made my heart almost stop. It was as if, in that touch, a new layer of intimacy formed between us. Later, while trying to seem casual during dinner, our conversations began to flow in a way I never imagined. The energy was shifting. The pretense was becoming something more. When Chloe asked me to help her improvise an answer to one of her parents' questions, I realized I was genuinely enjoying myself. The initial nervousness had given way to an unexpected comfort. We were nearing. The distance I'd always sensed between us seemed to shrink, if temporarily. In that moment, I knew I was making choices that could shift our future, maybe this weekend's charade, a milestone. Chloe's parents' arrival was a whirlwind. I hid, nervous, as the situation unfolded. Entering, the air was thick with expectation. Chloe's look, mixing anxiety and amusement, gave me courage. She was beautiful, confident. I wondered how I'd been near her so long without realizing my deep affection. "Hi, Mom. This is Ethan, my boyfriend," she announced, words like a declaration of war. My heart raced, sweat trickling. All I could do was smile nervously, trying to seem natural. Chloe's parents seemed charmed. I forced myself into character, pressure palpable. Dinner began, conversation flowing like a river of questions and smiles. Chloe's parents were friendly, but I couldn't shake the trap-like feeling. Each question seemed an attempt to gauge our relationship's depth. How did you meet? What do you like doing together? Such inquiries made my nervousness grow. As Chloe responded naturally, I felt like an actor on stage, unable to break character. She laughed. I tried to keep pace, but each look from her held a mix of complicity and expectation. We met at work. Ethan is really talented, she said, praising me with a glint in her eyes, a blend of pride and panic stirring within. I needed a breath. Daringly, I risked an improvisation. And well, besides work, we also love eating sushi together. The words burst out, unexpected. Everyone froze. Chloe, sensing my humor, laughed, adding, "Yes, and he always picks the best." Tension dissipated. Conversation flowed more freely, yet as talk turned to the future, a weight settled on my back. "Any plans for the weekend?" Chloe's dad asked, smiling. The question seemed innocent, but I felt all eyes on me, awaiting an answer. My brain raced. All I could stammer was, "Oh yes, we love to just wander and, maybe try something new." I wasn't quite sure what I was saying, but the way Chloe smiled at me gave me a jolt. I tried to keep my composure, but the truth was, I felt utterly vulnerable. This charade was becoming more than just an act. A genuine feeling was slowly seeping through the words. After dinner, as everyone settled onto the couch, Chloe and I exchanged knowing glances. As if an invisible thread was weaving between us, I was beginning to sense a different dynamic unfolding. Our movements felt lighter, and a quiet comfort was growing, as if we were discovering a new kind of friendship, even as the pretense still held its own unspoken barriers. When Chloe's parents moved to the kitchen, she leaned closer and whispered, "You're doing great. You don't look nervous at all." I chuckled, but inside, a genuine maelstrom of emotions was brewing. "I just hope they don't ask us to show them travel photos or anything," I said, trying to keep my voice light. She laughed softly, and for a fleeting moment, the world around us simply faded away. The evening wore on, a peculiar blend of performance and subtle revelations. I wasn't merely playing the boyfriend she needed. I was beginning to uncover a version of myself I hadn't known existed. An Ethan who could be witty, self-assured, and perhaps even a little bolder. The tension of being near her was truly electrifying, and every accidental touch, every lingering glance seemed to deepen the connection we were forging. As the conversation drifted to more personal subjects, I found myself talking about my love for photography, something I'd never truly shared with anyone before. It was a part of me I had always kept carefully guarded, but the way Chloe looked at me, with an admiration that felt utterly genuine, made me feel it was safe to finally open my heart. I just love capturing moments, It's like I can freeze happiness into a single image. She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners, and replied, "That's beautiful, Ethan. I would truly love to see some of your photos someday." My heart gave a sudden leap at her words. It wasn't merely a compliment. It felt like an invitation to a whole new dimension of our burgeoning relationship, even if it was still officially a charade. The evening finally drew to a close, and as Chloe's parents eventually retired for the night, I realized I had just ridden an intense emotional roller coaster. This game of acting was undeniably morphing into something far more profound, and I found myself increasingly entangled. Could we, in fact, build something genuinely real from what began as such an elaborate pretense? In that very moment, I understood that love could be immensely complicated, yet perhaps it could also be wonderfully simple. Sometimes it hides within the smallest choices we make, and the choice I was beginning to embrace was to truly open myself to Chloe, to allow myself to feel what was genuinely stirring within, even if it was still cloaked in the guise of a charade. The evening stretched on until Chloe's parents finally went to their room, leaving us alone in the living space. The atmosphere was charged with an energy I had never experienced before. The apartment was quiet, and the silence seemed to invite us to explore a territory that, until then, had been unknown to us. I could feel the tension in the air, a mixture of nervousness and expectation. It was as if we were on the edge of a cliff, ready to take a leap together. Chloe turned to me, a shy smile on her lips. "So, what did you think? Was it too crazy?" She had a sparkle in her eyes that made me feel a warmth in my chest. Without thinking, I replied, "It was. I never imagined I'd do anything like that." Each word felt like an invitation for me to open up more. There was a silent understanding between us, as if those hours together had broken down barriers I didn't know existed. "You did really well," she praised, leaning slightly closer. "You made me look convincing." Her proximity made me tense, but at the same time relieved. The way she looked at me made me feel that maybe, just maybe, this charade could turn into something true. We decided to prepare a snack, and as we were in the kitchen, the mood began to shift. The soft lamplight illuminated her features, and I watched her as she gathered some ingredients. There was a softness in her movements, a grace that left me mesmerized. "Do you know how to make good guacamole?" I asked, trying to break the ice. "Actually, I can try," she replied, laughing. I looked at her, and her gentle laugh seemed to touch every part of my being. We started cooking together, and with each ingredient we added, a new layer of intimacy formed. Our fingers lightly brushed as we passed the avocado to each other, and each small contact seemed to ignite a spark. Have you ever thought about how funny it is that we're pretending to be a couple, but somehow it's brought us closer? Chloe said, as she stirred the mixture. I watched her, absorbing every word. It's like by forcing ourselves to act as one, we're revealing parts of ourselves that we'd normally be afraid to show. "I was thinking that too," I said, hesitant. "It's like, the charade forced us to be more authentic." And indeed, as she spoke, I realized I was opening up more than I ever had before. Talking about my insecurities became easier, and as we talked, the barriers I had built around myself began to crumble. Our laughter grew more frequent, and as the guacamole neared completion, our conversation deepened. Chloe shared her past relationship experiences, how she often felt trapped in a cycle of superficiality. "Sometimes it feels like everyone is more concerned with keeping up appearances than with building something real," she confessed, with a sincerity that resonated deep within me. "I feel that too. Often, I wonder if I'm even capable of building anything true," I admitted. The words spilled out of me like a torrent. "I think I've always been afraid to open up because I didn't want to be rejected." Her gaze encouraged me to continue. I had never spoken about this to anyone, but there, in Chloe's kitchen, everything felt simpler. She turned to me, her eyes shining with understanding. "You're not alone. Everyone has fears, Ethan. It's normal to feel vulnerable." In that moment, she reached out and lightly touched my arm. The touch was soft, yet powerful, and I felt a warmth spreading through my body. It was as if that simple gesture was breaking down the last barriers I had built. Chloe moved even closer, and the space between us began to vanish. "Sometimes vulnerability can be liberating," she whispered. I knew we were at a crucial turning point. What had started as a pretense was transforming into something far more significant. The desire to be close to her began to flood my thoughts. The fear of ruining that moment was palpable. I raised my hand and held hers, not wanting to let go. I looked into her eyes, and she seemed to understand everything I was feeling. "You look so beautiful right now," I said, even unsure if it was appropriate. But the truth was right there, exposed between us. And by making that comment, I realized I was no longer afraid to expose myself. Whatever happened next, I was ready to face it. In that instant, the world around us vanished. The kitchen noises, the scent of guacamole, everything became secondary. I leaned closer, and when our mouths finally met, it was as if time itself had stopped. The kiss was soft, almost hesitant at first, but quickly transformed into something more intense. It was full of promises, of everything we hadn't said, and of everything we were just beginning to feel. When we pulled away, still holding hands, Chloe's gaze was one of surprise, but also of satisfaction. "Wow," she murmured, and all I could do was smile. "That was intense," I said, trying to summarize the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "Yes, and maybe a little unexpected," she replied, with an emotional glimmer in her eyes. The laughter between us broke the tension, but I knew there was no turning back. We were in new territory, and the pretense that had brought us together was now a gateway to something real. Our smiles transformed into a mutual understanding, as if there in that small kitchen space we had created a new world, a world where fear and insecurity were set aside, and where love could even unexpectedly reveal itself in the small choices we decided to make. I didn't know what the future held for us, but in that moment I knew I was willing to find out. After that magical night in Chloe's kitchen, the dynamic between Chloe and me irreversibly changed. The kiss had shattered a barrier I hadn't even known existed, bringing a new layer of complexity to our lives. What had begun as a charade to deceive her parents now felt like a delicate dance between reality and illusion, and I found myself in a dilemma. How far was I willing to go for this new connection? In the following days, the routine at Pixel Forge continued, but everything felt different. Meetings became a game of meaningful glances and discreet smiles. When our eyes met, there was a silent understanding, a sharing of secrets only we two knew. Yet, this new intimacy also carried a burden, the need to keep our relationship a secret. Colleagues began to notice the shift in our dynamic, and the tension mounted as curiosity grew. One afternoon, during a meeting, a cheeky colleague made a joke. "Hey, Ethan, aren't you looking a little too happy today? Did your girlfriend not stop by to give you a hug?" The laughter that followed was contagious, but my stomach twisted. I looked at Chloe and saw her expression was a mix of surprise and amusement. "Maybe he's just focusing on his work?" Chloe quickly replied, winking at me. Her gaze gave me a surge, but the joke seemed to cast an unwanted light on what we were trying to conceal. My heart quickened as I realized I couldn't keep that secret much longer. As the days passed, the pressure intensified. The connection that once felt so sweet now became a burden. I didn't want Chloe to feel pressured. She was a strong, independent woman, and I wondered if I was being selfish for wanting to keep her close. When we found ourselves in secluded spots during work, the conversation always returned to our situation. "I don't know how we can keep going like this," I told her in a moment of vulnerability while we were at the daily grind. "You're right," she replied, looking into my eyes. "I think we're just delaying the inevitable." The truth was, she wanted a genuine connection, and I was starting to realize that the fear of being discovered was affecting our relationship. What I desired most was the freedom to experience this new dynamic without the weight of the secret. One afternoon, while we were at Confluence Park near the agency, I decided it was time to take a stand. The weather was sunny, and the fresh air seemed to encourage us to open our hearts. "Chloe," I began hesitantly, "I think we need to be more honest about what we're feeling. I can't live like this anymore, hidden. You're important to me, and I want everyone to know that." She looked at me with a mix of surprise and gratitude. "You don't know how much that means to me," she said softly. "The truth is, I'm tired of this secret too, but I'm afraid of the consequences." Fear was etched on her face, and I realized she also felt torn. What if we decided to be true to each other? What if we opened up our relationship to everyone? My voice trembled with emotion. This idea was liberating, but also terrifying. What would happen if others knew? How would our colleagues react? And more importantly, how would our bosses react? Chloe hesitated, biting her lower lip. Ethan, do you understand the risks? This could affect our careers. The concern in her voice was palpable, and I understood it. The agency hierarchy was rigid, and any deviation from the norms could cost us dearly. But at the same time, the idea of continuing to live in a state of pretense seemed even more oppressive. What if we tried to do this gradually, I suggested. We can start by telling a few close friends, just the people we trust. Chloe considered the proposal, and I could see that despite the fear, there was a spark of hope in her eyes. Maybe you're right, she finally said. If we start slowly, we can figure out how things unfold. Immense relief washed over me. What once seemed like an insurmountable mountain now felt like a small hill, and I knew we were ready to face the challenge together. We returned to work with a new determination. We began to engage our friends in more personal conversations, slowly revealing the truth about our relationship. The response we received was a mix of support and surprise, but deep down, the feeling of freedom began to embrace us. With each person we told, the weight of the secret dissipated. One day, while we were having lunch with a group of friends, a colleague commented, "You two seem to be closer lately." I felt my heart stop for a moment. Chloe, noticing my reaction, smiled and replied, "Yes, we're getting to know each other better." That simple sentence gave me courage, and on an impulse I added, "Actually, we're dating." The silence that followed was deafening. Looks of surprise spread around the table, but the reaction was quick. "Congratulations!" a friend exclaimed, and soon everyone began to applaud and celebrate. The relief that washed over me was indescribable. The weight that had previously oppressed me now transformed into joy. Yet the work challenge still loomed. In a team meeting, the rigid agency director gave us a curious look. I sensed her attention to our behavior. Unease returned. What if she discovered us? The fear of exposing our relationship to such a severe leader made me question if we'd rushed. "Ethan, you seem worried," Chloe commented during coffee after the meeting. "Everything all right?" "Just thinking what happens if the director finds out," I confessed. "I don't want it to affect our careers." "I'm scared too," she admitted. "But I can't live in uncertainty." We decided then to talk with our supervisor, a courageous step. We knew it put everything on the line. Fear was present, but the will to be authentic was stronger. With hands intertwined, we entered Eleanor's office. My heart pounded, each beat a drum in my head. It was time to face the truth, not just for us, but for everyone. The charade had become a beautiful story, now ready to shine in daylight. Hands intertwined, I stepped into her office, my heart pounding like a drum. The atmosphere, charged with expectation, felt like a leap of faith. Chloe was by my side. Her gaze held determination, yet also anxiety. We knew what we were about to do could change everything. Eleanor, a woman of imposing demeanor and piercing gaze, was on her computer. When she looked up and saw us, her expression mixed curiosity and concern. "Ethan, Chloe, what brings you here?" Her voice was firm, yet a slight openness encouraged us. "We need to talk about something important," I began, trying to stay calm as nervousness coursed through me. Chloe squeezed my hand, giving me courage. "It's about our relationship." Eleanor raised an eyebrow, attentive. "Continue." She was curious, but maintained professionalism. The air felt denser. I knew it was now or never. "Chloe and I are dating," I said, words fast, hoping to lessen the gravity. "We know this may concern some, but honesty felt right." Eleanor paused, silent. I watched her face. Chloe beside me stared. The tension was palpable. I expected disapproval. Instead, she was surprisingly calm. "I understand," she said, neutral. "Transparency is vital." Be aware of company policies on colleague relationships. Chloe and I glanced. This was my fear, our relationship as a problem. Yes, we know the implications, I replied, voice firm. We commit to professionalism. Eleanor nodded, serious. Your honesty is admirable, but it mustn't interfere with duties. Inappropriate conduct means intervention. We understand, Chloe affirmed confidently. Our personal and professional lives will stay separate. Eleanor watched us, then relaxed slightly. I'll trust your management, she declared. Team success depends on you both. Keep communication open. Report difficulties. We left her office, a huge weight lifted. The talk wasn't bad, it invigorated us. With her cautious approval, we were ready. Days later, our revelation energized the team. No more hidden glances or subtle smiles. Our palpable, contagious energy drew warm support. The charade, born of necessity, blossomed into a vibrant beginning reality. One afternoon at the daily grind, Chloe, smiling, asked, "Sure you don't want to celebrate, mark this new phase?" Her excitement was contagious. Maybe a party at the agency, I suggested, imagining what it could be like. We could invite our closest friends and celebrate our new freedom. The proposal was well received, and we started planning a small celebration. With every detail we organized, the excitement grew. The idea of openly commemorating our love brought new energy into our lives, and the party transformed into a symbol of our new reality. On the night of the party, the atmosphere was lit by soft lights and decorated with colorful balloons. Music played in the background while our friends danced and laughed. Chloe and I were at the center, surrounded by people who supported us. Sitting and looking around made me feel a wave of happiness I didn't know could exist. It's incredible, isn't it? Chloe said, holding my hand as we watched the party. So many friends here to celebrate with us. Yes, it's better than I could imagine, I agreed. And all of this started because of a charade for your parents. And look where we are now, she replied, with a smile that made my heart race. The atmosphere was filled with joy and support, and the feeling of freedom filled the air. In a moment of boldness, I started to dance with her, pulling her closer. The rhythm of the music enveloped us, and as we danced, the connection between us seemed to intensify. Looking into her eyes, I realized that this was a new beginning, a chapter we were writing together. After a few hours of celebration, I decided to make a speech. With a glass in hand, I asked for everyone's attention. I want to thank everyone for being here. When all of this started, I didn't know what to expect, but this charade turned into something real and beautiful. I'm grateful to have Chloe by my side and to have friends like you who support us. The applause was instant and warm, and Chloe's gaze filled my heart with joy. Let's toast to new adventures, to freedom and to love, I said, raising my glass. The chorus of voices that responded was full of enthusiasm, and we toasted to this new phase of our lives. In that moment, I realized that the journey which had begun with a charade had now become a celebration of true love. The fear had disappeared, and the future lay before us, full of possibilities. We were ready to face whatever came our way, together. A few weeks passed since the party, and the new reality we created together seemed to have settled naturally. Chloe and I were closer than ever, and the work environment had become a reflection of this change. The small interactions that were once filled with tension were now full of joy and complicity. Exchanged glances during meetings, discreet smiles as we passed each other. Every moment seemed to reinforce what we had built. Our friends were happy for us, and the team felt more united. Instead of feeling insecure about our relationship, I started to realize that by being honest about what we felt, we were creating a safe space for all of us. The support from our colleagues turned into a genuine bond of friendship. One morning, as we had coffee together, Chloe held my hand and said, "Did you know that sometimes happiness can be found in the simplest things?" The way she looked at me made my heart warm. We were at the Daily Grind coffee shop, and the aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the warmth of our intimacy. "I know," I replied, thinking about how every moment beside her became special. It's like everything I ever wanted was right in front of me, and I just needed to allow myself to see it. It was true. Before, I was so caught up in fear and insecurity that I couldn't see how beautiful life could be. Now, next to Chloe, everything seemed more vibrant. One evening, we decided to take a walk at Confluence Park. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and the air was crisp, carrying a faint scent of flowers. As we walked, we talked about our dreams and aspirations, sharing vulnerabilities we once held close. "I've always wanted to travel the world," Chloe said, her eyes glowing with enthusiasm, "to experience new cultures, taste new foods, make friends in different places." "That sounds incredible," I responded, imagining the possibility of being beside her on such an adventure. "I'd love to travel too. It would be wonderful to explore new places together." The thought moved me. What once seemed distant now became a real possibility. During our walk, we found a small pond, surrounded by illuminated trees. The spot felt magical, and we decided to sit on one of the benches. Looking at the water, reflecting the lights around us, I felt inspired to do something special. "Chloe," I said, "I want you to know that you've changed my life. You taught me to be more open and to appreciate the little things. I want to do something meaningful." She looked at me with curiosity, and I continued, "I want to travel with you. I want to explore the world and live incredible experiences by your side." Her smile widened, and my eyes met hers. "You really want to?" She seemed genuinely moved, and that gave me courage. "Yes, I do. Let's plan a trip together. We can start with a place we've always wanted to visit." Chloe looked radiant, and in that instant, I knew the connection we had was more than just a relationship. It was a partnership, a deep friendship transforming into true love. That night, we talked about destinations, planned itineraries, and dreamed of the freedom the trip would bring us. It was a new chapter, and we were ready to write it together. The fear that once held me captive dissipated, giving way to a vibrant hope and a desire to live fully. Days later, when we finally settled on our destination, we chose a place we'd always dreamed of, a small coastal town renowned for its stunning beaches and vibrant culture. My expectations were high, and the excitement swirled with the familiar anxiety of stepping into the unknown. As we prepared for the trip, I realized that every step we took together was a true advancement in our shared journey. From an uncertain, timid start, we had transformed our lives into a story now brimming with adventure and profound discoveries. And so, with our bags packed and my heart overflowing with love, we were embarking on a brand new phase of our lives. The charade that had begun out of necessity had blossomed into an extraordinary reality, and I knew that, with Chloe by my side, I could face any challenge the future held. Together we were stronger, and the promise of a life filled with rich experiences and genuine love awaited us just ahead.